Those who stand on tiptoes do not stand firmly. Those who rush ahead don't get very far. Those who try to outshine others dim their own light. These ancient Taoist words reflect a profound truth. In our efforts to push ahead, to stand out, or to constantly improve ourselves, we lose balance. We fail to stand firmly on our own ground. Allow that to sink in. How can we truly improve when we are fixated on the act of trying to improve? Many people spend their lives chasing after improvement, striving to better their circumstances, accumulate wealth, knowledge, or recognition. Yet, despite their efforts, the results are often underwhelming. They gain knowledge and pursue external things, but at the cost of exhausting their bodies and burdening their minds, only to find themselves discontent in the end. The Taoists observed a recurring pattern in human behavior. We tend to act in ways that are not only ineffective, but actually counterproductive. In our attempts to change or control the natural flow of life, we often make things worse. These strivings, whether through societal rules, ethics, or values, are created with the intention of benefiting humanity. Yet, according to the ancient Taoist sages, we should actually get rid of these constructs. Why? Because these man-made ideas only push us further away from the natural flow of life. They cause us to resist the natural course, which is effortless and harmonious. Trying to alter what nature has intended is like swimming upstream against a powerful current. It's not only exhausting, but it gets us nowhere. The struggle is futile. This video is about not trying to change the world in order to gain the world. Behind the ever-changing universe lies a force so mysterious and indefinable that the best word we have for it is Tao. The Tao is all-encompassing, transcending everything that our senses and intellect can perceive. It is the underlying, unnameable force behind all existence, and yet, we can never fully grasp it. The Taoists remind us that, although we cannot comprehend the Tao with our minds, we can still feel and know it. This symbolizes the tragic attempts by humans to conceptualize things beyond their understanding. We use names, labels, and categories to make sense of the world. In doing so, we impose artificial structures on life to create the illusion of understanding. But by trying to comprehend the universe in rigid terms, we lose touch with the Tao. We reduce the vastness of existence into something that fits neatly into human perception. And in this act, we miss the bigger picture. 5 colors blind the eye. 5 notes deafen the ear. 5 flavors dull the taste. Lao Tzu, the legendary founder of Taoism, wrote these words in the Tao Te Ching, and they speak to the limits of human perception. We arrange colors, sounds, and flavors in a way that makes sense to us, but by doing so, we restrict our understanding of the infinite possibilities outside those fixed concepts. There is so much more beyond what we can see, hear, or taste. In the same way, humans create rigid rules and systems to gain a sense of control over their lives. But instead of expanding our potential, these rules actually limit us. We confine ourselves within the boundaries of our own making. And when the world inevitably changes, when what worked today no longer works tomorrow, our systems fail us. Out of a desire for solidarity, fairness, and justice, we create elaborate moral codes, ethics, and rituals. While these may seem like noble efforts, Taoists argue that these artificial constructs only serve to imprison us. Even when our intentions are good, our attempts to make things work only complicate life further. Now let's talk about the idea of trying. We often hear the advice that we should act and not simply try. Many of us are familiar with this idea, especially in the context of achieving a flow state, a state where action becomes effortless, and we are fully immersed in what we are doing. In the flow state, we become one with the activity, like a dancer who becomes the dance, or a poet who becomes the poem. This is the essence of Wu Wei, a central concept in Taoism. Wu Wei can be translated as non-doing or doing nothing, but that doesn't mean being passive or lazy. In the context of flow, Wu Wei is best understood as effortless action, acting in a way that is smooth, natural, and in harmony with the present moment. However, in the context of this video, the literal translation of Wu Wei, doing nothing, is most relevant. In modern society, doing nothing is often seen as unproductive or wasteful. We're taught that to progress we must constantly be active and productive. But according to the Taoists, nothing could be further from the truth. When we remember that the universe is in a constant state of flux, always moving and evolving, we see that there is progression in the natural flow of life, even when we're not actively forcing it. Rather than exhausting ourselves with effort, which has become the default mode in today's culture, we can move through life with greater ease by using intelligence and wisdom. How often do we see problems resolve themselves when we leave them alone? And how often do we make things worse by rushing to act? By trying to improve things constantly, we distance ourselves from the natural course of life. The Taoists believe that, more often than not, our efforts are unnatural. We waste our bodies and minds through relentless striving, and ultimately we accomplish very little. So why do we continue to do this? It comes down to how we attribute value to certain things. We are conditioned to be averse to poverty and discomfort. While desiring wealth, fame, and success, we resist logic and discipline, but yearn to be part of something greater. We try to eliminate the things we don't want and increase the things we do. But the truth is, the two cannot be separated. Wealth cannot exist without poverty, just as light cannot exist without darkness. This duality is a fundamental principle of life. We often think it's necessary to conform to societal standards and change nature based on belief systems. We try to improve the world around us, but the results of these interventions are often questionable at best and harmful at worst. So how can we apply these ancient Taoist ideas in the modern world? In what ways do we, as modern humans, try, only to end up with nothing but disappointment in the end? Let's dive deeper into specific examples of how we try and how these efforts backfire, drawing from the ancient Taoist texts, the Tao Te Ching, and the Zhuangzi. The first example we're looking at is about the dangers of trying to improve the world. The renowned scholar Alan Watts, who was deeply influenced by Taoism, once pointed out something that often goes unnoticed. The goody-goodies of society, the ones always trying to save the world, are sometimes the biggest troublemakers. Their insistence on improving things, on bending society to fit their rigid notions of good and evil, often disrupts the natural flow of life. Think about it. How many times have we seen people with the best intentions, completely convinced they know what's best for everyone, end up making things worse? A classic case of this is communism. It originated from a genuine desire to improve humanity, centered on ideals like equality and fair distribution of resources. But beyond the philosophical debate about whether this approach aligns with nature or not, the reality of how it was implemented tells a brutal story. In pursuit of this vision of a better world, entire populations suffered. Millions were forced to adhere to a rigid ideology that cared little for the nuances of real life. So much pain and destruction, all in the name of trying to make things better. There's an ancient story that brings this idea home. A man named Yen Wei once approached the sage Confucius, asking for permission to travel to the country of Wei. Yen Wei had heard that the country was ruled by a leader who was utterly incompetent, and with all his wisdom and knowledge about governance, he was convinced he could help turn things around. He wanted to save the country, to show them the better way. But Confucius, in his wisdom, advised against it. Why? Well, Confucius knew that the people of Wei, like all people, would be resistant to change imposed by an outsider, especially someone coming in with an air of moral superiority. Confucius said, "If you do not understand men's minds, but instead appear before a tyrant and force him to listen to sermons on benevolence and righteousness, measures and standards, this is simply using other men's bad points to parade your own excellence." In other words, Yen Wei's desire to help wasn't truly selfless. It was about showcasing his own virtues by highlighting the failures of others. And in the process, he'd only create more conflict and resistance. We must ask ourselves, in what ways do we use other people's flaws as a stage for our own supposed virtues? Is it really virtuous to change people or situations when it comes from a place of superiority? As history and experience show, moral superiority often backfires. Whether it's through political systems, social movements, or even personal relationships, trying to fix the world while standing on a moral pedestal only creates more division. Lao Tzu, the great Taoist sage, captures this idea beautifully in the Tao Te Ching when he says, "Do you want to rule the world and control it? I don't think it can ever be done. The world is a sacred vessel and it cannot be controlled. You will only make it worse if you try. It may slip through your fingers and disappear." His wisdom reminds us that the more we try to dominate and enforce our will on the world, the more elusive and fragile it becomes. Trying to force things into neat categories of right and wrong, good and bad, only leads to chaos. The world doesn't work that way. It flows, it balances itself, and when we try too hard to control it, we often end up destroying the very thing we're trying to protect. Now, let's move to the second example, the pursuit of happiness. In today's society, we're constantly chasing happiness. It's as if life is one long race to reach some distant, elusive goal, whether it's money, status, fame, power, or even knowledge. But here's the paradox. These ongoing efforts to be happy are often the reason we aren't happy at all. Think about it. We convince ourselves that happiness lies in the future, when we've achieved this or that. We think, I'll be happy when I have $1 million, or I'll be happy when I finally publish that book, or when my YouTube channel hits 100,000 subscribers, then I'll feel fulfilled. But is that really true? Sure, we get a fleeting sense of pleasure when we reach these milestones. We celebrate, we feel good for a while, but that feeling is temporary. It's not true, lasting happiness. The Taoists have a term for this. They say that by constantly chasing after happiness, we exhaust both our bodies and our minds. We elevate these desires to a place of importance they don't deserve, while tragically never achieving what we're really looking for. As the Taoists explain, this is what the world honors: wealth, eminence, long life, a good name. This is what the world finds happiness in: a life of ease, rich food, fine clothes, beautiful sights, sweet sounds. This is what it looks down on: poverty, meanness, early death, a bad name. This is what it finds bitter: a life that knows no rest, a mouth that gets no rich food, no fine clothes for the body, no beautiful sights for the eye, no sweet sounds for the ear. People who can't get these things fret a great deal and are afraid. This is a stupid way to treat the body. People who are rich wear themselves out rushing around on business, piling up more wealth than they could ever use. This is a superficial way to treat the body. In a world obsessed with material success, we spend so much time chasing these things. But are they worth the cost? Do they bring us peace? Or do they simply lead us down a never-ending path of desire? Taoism teaches us that happiness doesn't come from fulfilling our endless cravings for wealth or recognition. In fact, the more we chase after these things, the more we lose sight of what really matters. Now let's talk about the third example, trying to be something else. This example comes from a fascinating story in the Zhuangzi, one of the foundational texts of Taoism. It tells of animals and the wind, each envying the other for their unique characteristics. The centipede envies the snake for being able to move without legs. The snake, in turn, envies the wind for being able to travel great distances without even having a body. And yet, the wind points out that it can be stopped by something as simple as a finger or a foot. This story reflects a deep truth about human nature. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others, wishing we had what they have, and in the process we lose sight of our own unique gifts. Instead of embracing who we are, we try to become something else. Think about how often we see this in society. White-skinned people strive to get tanned, while East Asians try to look more European. Brunettes want to be blonde, and blondes want to be brunette. We change our appearance, our habits, even our personalities to fit some arbitrary standard. Why? because society has convinced us that we're not good enough as we are. We cut off our sixth finger just to conform to the five-finger standard. But why can't we just be who we are, the way nature intended? As Lao Tzu puts it, when people see things as beautiful, ugliness is created. When people see things as good, evil is created. Being and non-being produce each other. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short define each other. High and low oppose each other. Before and after follow each other. In other words, by labeling things, by assigning value to one thing over another, we create division. We create struggle. But if we could just accept things as they are, we could find peace in the natural flow of life. So how can we put these ideas into practice? The Taoists suggest a few ways. One of the most important is to follow the middle path, as explained in the Zhuangzi. This means not stretching ourselves too thin, not overreaching, but instead staying centered and grounded. As the text says, follow the middle, go by what is constant, and you can stay in one piece. Keep yourself alive, look after your parents, and live out your years. The Tao, or the way, is constant. Those who seek the Tao learn something new every day. Not by adding knowledge, but by letting go of preconceived ideas and allowing the world to reveal itself as it is. Instead of trying to force the world into a rigid structure, we learn to embrace the natural flow of life. Lao Tzu calls this the fasting of the heart, a process of unlearning, of letting go of the mental clutter we accumulate until we reach a state of inner stillness. Only in this emptiness, this openness, can we truly connect with the Tao, or if you prefer, with God. And in this state, we find true contentment. The Taoists call this the art of non-action, or Wu Wei. It's the practice of not trying, yet nothing is left undone. Thank you for watching.